All right, so it finally happened. I finally watched Pulp Fiction. And for anyone who does not regularly watch my streams, you'll probably wonder why I keep saying finally. This has been something that has been ongoing that I've been talking about wanting to do for at least 2 years, possibly longer. I've watched a fair amount of Tarantino movies, but for some reason, Pulp Fiction was just one of those movies I had never seen. I don't know how it happened. It's a classic. Everybody talks about it. It's so cool. I have seen memes, GIFs, quotes, heard quotes from this movie my entire life growing up. It's such a famous, I personally think, pretty culturally significant movie. And I just missed it. It was just one of those that I missed. And so it was finally time for me to watch it. People have been requesting reviews for this movie for so long. So I sat my happy butt down and I watched this movie, 2.5 hours. It's funny because people always made it sound like it was such a long movie. But I guess I'm used to longer movies, maybe being a Marvel fan. 2.5 hours is not as long as I thought. I was thinking like 3+ maybe. So I was expecting it to actually be longer. So to me, it wasn't that long and it didn't feel very long either. Jumping into it, they start the movie off with a bang. We have Tim Roth and Amanda Plummer are the two, Honey Bunny. I don't think we ever get her real name. Honey Bunny and Pumpkin, that cannot be their real names. And they're talking about, robbing liquor stores and gas stations and all these things. And they decide that they're going and robbing banks. And they decide that they're going to rob the cafe that they are in. It's worth mentioning, or not worth mentioning, I guess maybe just for me, but I lived in LA for 7 years and it looked a lot like the norms that I've been to and eaten at. It's just interesting. There are like little things that you pick up and you're like, I don't know if I've been there or if it's just so similar to that area that it makes you think that you've been there. But anyway, so I thought that was really interesting because I was like, I swear I've been in there. I've seen like the layout, the booths, the counter, everything. So that was kind of cool. But yeah, what I love about this movie, the whole movie is a character-driven movie. Every single character, no matter how small the role, really adds something to the movie, and they're all characters. I don't want to jump around too much, but I know that I will a little bit. The cab driver, when Butch is getting away in the scene where the chapter, and that's another thing I really like about this movie, is that especially as a big fan of books and reading, this felt very much like a novel. The way that it jumped around from it felt like different chapters, and it jumped around from different character perspectives, which is something you get a lot in books, which you don't get that often in movies. It tends to be more of like beginning, middle, end sort of through line, and they're telling a story. I mean, that's what you typically see. This was really, really fun because it was told from the perspective of each character. And it was kind of these self-contained little stories, but within a bigger story. And they start in one place, and then they bring it back to the beginning with the end, and it all kind of comes together, and you see the full picture. And I thought it was so freaking cool how he did that. And like I said, I've seen a fair amount of Tarantino movies. There's not one that I haven't liked. So I didn't expect to not like this at all, but I don't know if I expected to like it as much as I did. I thought maybe because it had been so hyped up that I would like it less, or that it would have been maybe a little bit of a letdown, but totally not true. Really loved it. Really, really enjoyed the movie. I thought it was awesome. But yeah, back to the beginning. It was so interesting to see Amanda Plummer, or Honey Bunny. She's so sweet to the waitress. And this was, I don't know, this really stuck in my mind. She's so sweet to the waitress. She's asking for more coffee, and you can see her making like almost kind of weird eye contact. And she's smiling so sweetly. And then when the time comes for them to pull out their guns and they're going to rob that coffee shop, it's just the change in her face and her personality, and she just becomes a completely different person. And I don't know why that stuck with me, but I really appreciated that because she played both of those roles so well. And then as we come back to the end, it really comes full circle when Samuel L. Jackson, his character Jules, and John Travolta's character Vincent are in that very coffee shop, eating, got pancakes and a muffin. God, that movie really made me want pancakes. They were eating pancakes. They were talking about pancakes. Now I want pancakes, blueberry pancakes with melted butter and syrup. So anyway, and they bring it back around, and then, when she's in the face of the people that they were trying to emulate, they really were trying to show themselves as these badass people who were there to get what they wanted, or they were going to kill people in the process. Then when they came face to face with a real version of that, and that was Vincent and that was Jules, it scared the crap out of Honey Bunny. And it was not a fun time for her. She was about to pee herself and she wanted to cry. You could tell she was absolutely freaking out. So I thought that was a really interesting little dichotomy thing that they did there. But yeah, no, just every single scene was so good. Like I said, I really liked how they jumped back and forth from character to character, because it doesn't feel like it's any one character's story. It's everyone, right? You've got Marcellus, played by Ving Rhames. I don't know. I hope I'm saying that right. The cast of this too, by the way. I also really appreciate that they put Steve Buscemi in this. It's such a small role. He plays the waiter, and he comes up. I forget who he was dressed at. For some reason, yeah, I think it was Buddy Holly. Yeah, it was Buddy Holly. So he comes up dressed as Buddy Holly in this restaurant, which I think is such a cool idea. I want to go to one of those restaurants. They're sitting in this booth, and this booth is this old car. It seemed like it was a very 50s themed restaurant. They were like doing the twist. Someone's going to come in and correct me on that decade, I know. But it was just, yeah, there was Buddy Holly. There was Marilyn Monroe. You had Zorro. They were the waiters there. I just thought that was such a cool scene, and that was with Uma Thurman, who played Mia Wallace, and John Travolta, who played Vincent, as we know. And he was taking her out, and that was just such a chaotic chapter, but in the best possible way. It's like you're sitting there, and I'm going to jump around a little bit, I guess, because the movie did as well, but you're sitting there and something's going to happen, but you don't know what it is. Like I said, I've seen memes, I've seen GIFs, I've heard quotes, but you don't know how it's all going to play out. And I didn't know how it was all going to play. At first, you think that Vincent's going to mess up and sleep with Mia Wallace. That is not what happened. That's the small thinking of that, because that's where it's leading you to. But no, Mia finds Vincent's drugs. Now, it's funny because as we're watching this, it was obviously H. I don't know how much I can say on YouTube, but we're talking about this in the context of a movie. So I'm hoping we're talking about art here. Was H. And I'm not super versed with that kind of stuff. So she takes it out of his pocket and snorts it. And I wondered out loud, I was like, can you snort that? Can you snort H? I don't know if you can. Maybe you can, but whatever it was too much, and she OD'd, and that was not what I was expecting. That whole scene, and so then Vincent freaks out, and I think they're going to the hospital. And when you just feel the energy when you see the car come sliding out into that empty road, and it does that crazy swerve, and he's driving like nuts. And I don't know why I thought he was going to the hospital. Of course he wouldn't go to the hospital. He calls the drug dealer Lance, played by Eric Stoltz, and his wife was Rosanna Arquette with all the piercings. They were also such great characters that added to it. Even down to the set design was really cool. Like, he's in the room with the drug dealer buying it, and there's all of these little like shelves, these odd little shelves on the wall with these platform heel shoes all over. And I'm just thinking, like, what's with the shoes? By the way, I did do a feet count, and I feel like maybe I got really into the story and missed some of it, but I do believe there were 3 barefoot scenes that were very foot focused. Although short, it was really funny. I expected it because, everybody talks about it. It's in every one of his movies. He acts like, I don't know, what are you talking about? What? That's not a thing. Yeah, no, we all see it. We know it's a thing. Obviously, the first one is when Mia Wallace comes out, and it's her walking, and it's just showing the feet. And there could be there is something to be said, rather, for her walking out like that without showing, because, at first it shows just her lips. It doesn't show her full face. It doesn't show her full body, and then it just shows her feet. So I kind of get to that point. But when she stops and lifts her foot up like that, it's just like, that was so unnecessary. That was just all about feet. The second one was also when she takes them off to do the dance, which maybe, John Travolta also took his shoes off, but he left his socks on. I did note that. So yeah, it was just, there were some feet in this for sure. But yeah, it was that scene was so chaotic, and then he gets the adrenaline and stabs her directly in the heart, and she absolutely does come to. And as with a lot of his movies, you don't really know who's going to make it and who's not. So I kind of was expecting her to not make it through that whole ordeal. But she was fine. And she comes through on the other side and he drops her off and, you know, he's obviously freaking out. What I didn't expect was for Vincent to get killed. That one got me. And I'm going to be honest with you, he's got such an oddly likable character, even though, you know, he clearly is a drug dealer's henchman. Or maybe he's not a drug dealer. They never really explicitly say what Marcellus does. I kind of, you know, he has that case. Also, there's another through thing. They have that case and Jules has the case and they open it and it's this shining gold stuff. And it's like, is that what I think it is? Still don't know what it was. Was it just gold? I don't know. They were acting like it was this amazing thing. So I'm not really sure what Marcellus did, but he had connections and he was some kind of a kingpin. It was some sort of a mob, something was going on. I assume drugs, but maybe not. So he's, you know, obviously not necessarily a good dude, but you're kind of, I don't know, you have... Jules and Vincent have a way of really like kind of reeling you in and you're like, no, I like these two characters, even though one of the first scenes is them shooting a bunch of people. So that was it Frank Whaley? I don't know if I'm saying that right either, but that's another actor. There are a lot of recognizable faces in this where you're like, wait, I know that guy. I've seen this guy in tons of movies. A lot of them were a lot younger in this movie than I've seen a lot of these actors in a long time, so that was interesting. I don't think I've ever seen Christopher Walken without gray hair. And his hair, although I don't know if that was natural, it didn't look it, was like jet black, which I think it was obviously done for the role. But it was still, I've never seen Christopher Walken that, or I guess I have. It's been a while. But anyway, Christopher Walken had a very small part in it. He's always great in everything. They told all these stories and these backstories about why, like with Butch, why that watch was so important to him. And I really appreciated the way they did that, especially because they do it in really funny ways. Like, literally, he was talking about having that watch up his ass. And then Butch's father also had the watch up his ass for like 2 years. And it was this really funny story that he's telling this little boy, like, hey, your dad died. But this is your birthright, this watch. We both had it up our ass for a while, but we got it to you. And it was such a funny moment. It was such a funny moment. But yeah, they tell these stories in such a great way. And Butch was a really interesting character. His whole thing that he had with, and that's another chapter, with Marcellus, and that whole debacle went completely left field. I had no idea that's where it was going to go. No idea. So obviously Marcellus pays Butch to throw the fight. So he's a boxer, obviously. He pays him to throw the fight. He's supposed to go down in the 5th round. And he's like, yeah, I'm going to go down in the 5th round. I kind of had a sneaking suspicion he wasn't, but I didn't think what was going to happen after that would happen. So yeah, of course he doesn't throw the fight. He, not only does he, I mean, can you call this, I mean, yeah, he did win. He won the fight. He killed the other boxer. So that was crazy. I thought he had a getaway car going because you see his bag go out the window. And that's when you hear the story of the watch. And as soon as you see the story of the watch, he's having this dream. He wakes up and you're like, oh, he's not going to throw the fight. I know he's not going to throw the fight. He does not throw the fight. Literally beats the other boxer to death. Jumps out the window and the way that she was listening to the fight and she obviously knew it was him, but she stepped on that gas pedal like she was the getaway driver that he meant to have, and she knew everything that was happening. Totally just a regular cab driver. But she was very, very interested in what it felt like to kill a man, and that was creepy. She was another really interesting little, like, very small character. She just had that one little scene, but it lent so much to the movie, and it was just such a weird, and I also thought she was going to turn him in. She didn't. I thought she was going to tell on him. She absolutely did not. It unfolded in such an unorthodox way. He gets back there, he's got his girlfriend, and she's talking about wanting a little, oh God, what did she call it? She wanted a little belly pooch. She wanted a little pot. She wanted a little pot belly, and how sexy those were on women. And so that was just such an interesting character. She was such an interesting character. So, they're doing their thing. They're obviously in love. She forgets his watch. They're at some, sleazy motel. And He's got to go back to get his watch. It's a very important watch. His dad carried it in his ass for 2 years. The other guy carried it in his ass. Like, he's got to go back and get this watch. He had it put on a band because before it was just the watch face, you know? It was passed down from his great-grandfather or his grandfather. No, I think his great-grandfather. Anyway, the point is he had to go back and get this watch. He got the watch. He goes, I don't know what would make this man think that he should, after he knows that Marcellus Wallace is looking for him, he's gonna send his henchmen after him. He's like, let me stay. He gets the watch. He gets in. He has the opportunity to just get out. He decides to make, I'm sorry, not Pop-Tarts, because obviously you can't put that in the movie. Brown sugar cinnamon toaster pastries also made me want those. I'm very hungry. So he stops to make some freaking toaster pastries. And he just happens to look over and he sees a gun on his kitchen counter. Also, another funny note, I'm like 99% sure I've been to that apartment building to look at apartments, but no one ever met us there to show us the apartment. It looked like exactly like that, where we're looking at it from the outside and then you go inside. And I'm like, I swear to God, we've been there. Anyway, he sees the gun. He grabs the gun. Toilet flushes in the bathroom. Out comes Vincent. And I was not expecting this. Vincent sees him, and you can see he's like, oh, shit. And then Bruce Willis, Butch just shoots him. He just kills him. Yep, he's got his book. The Pop-Tarts. That's right. The Pop-Tarts popped up, and that seemed to be, it's like they're both kind of just staring at each other like, what are we going to do? The catalyst for everything was the Pop-Tarts. They pop up, and bam, he just starts shooting. And that's the end of Vincent. That's not the end of him in the movie, but that's his end because it's not shown chronologically, right? You know, it shows us every chapter, it's kind of back and forth through different times, going back around to the beginning. But he was such a good character. I was honestly a little bit bummed to see him go. But Butch gets away, and as he's driving away, you think, oh, wow, he's home free. He sees frickin' Marcellus walking across the street in front of him holding a box of donuts. I also want donuts. And he's got 2 coffees on the, and what are the chances of this? This is where stuff goes off the, like, this might be the most off the rail part of the movie. The craziest shit. He hits him, obviously, because here's his chance. He could get rid of him, and then he's just free. He's got all the money from the bookings on the fight that he was supposed to throw, but didn't. He's got all this money now. He can take off, start a new life with his girl. They're going to eat blueberry pancakes. He's got his watch. It sounds beautiful. But instead he accelerates, he hits the guy, he hits Marcellus, then he accelerates through the intersection, gets smashed by another car. They're both all messed up. You know, Marcellus has been hit by a car. Butch has been also hit by a car, but another car, his nose is broken, he's bleeding. There was Kathy Griffin in the movie. I don't think I've ever seen Kathy Griffin this young. She didn't look half bad. And so that was a random scene. And obviously he starts going after him. He starts shooting him. They end up in this pawn shop. And this is where stuff gets so crazy. It gets so weird. So I'm sitting there and Nick's watching this with me. And he goes, oh, some freaky stuff's about to happen. Like, you can just feel it. And you're like, yep. But I didn't think it was going to be this freaky. Like, this is not what I was expecting. So he, you know, the pawn shop, I don't know if he was an owner or if he just worked there, takes out his gun, stops everything from happening. Because, you know, Marcellus and Butch are fighting, and then Butch gets the gun. So he's going to shoot Marcellus and just be done, going to be good to go. That does not happen. Marcellus is already messed up, so he just passes out, and the pawn shop owner smacks Butch in the face. He passes out. They come to, they've got ball gags in their mouth, and you're like, uh-oh, this can't be good. Because who just has ball gags laying around? I mean, I do, but for reasons. That's not something that more normal people just have. And so he's like, I gotta call Z. He's gotta call Z. Or was it Zed? It was Zed, not Z. He's got to call Zed. In comes this Zed guy who at first Nick thought was Walter Goggins, and it actually did look like him for a second. Then you see his face and it's not. But anyway, he comes over and he's just this random security guard. And I'm like, oh God, what's going to happen? And then they say, well, you got to go wake the Gimp. It was an actual Gimp. They brought an actual man in a Gimp suit from the cage that he was locked in. This little tiny chest cage thing. He was on a leash. They brought him out. they tied him up, you know, by his little collar, and he did the eeny, meeny, miny, mo on who he was going to have his way with. And it landed on Marcellus. And so he takes him into the room, and that's when Butch gets away, knocks the Gimp out. The Gimp's trying to warn him, knocks him out. He falls down, and obviously that's it for him. You can see, you know, he's hanging there. He's knocked out. That's it. And he's going to just get out of there. Something changes his mind. I think he's thinking about it. And he's like, I can't leave. No matter what beef we have, I can't leave him there for that. It's like, I feel like that's some kind of, it's not even just a guy code. That's just like human. You're like, you can't. That's a fate worse than death. We can't have this. We can't leave him there for that. So he goes back, kills the pawn shop owner, and you know, he has a katana. He gets a katana. He goes through a bunch. First it's a hammer, then it's a bat, then he's got a chainsaw, then he sees a katana. And he's got he walks in. Pawn shop owner's watching while Zed has his way with Marcellus. So that was a very interesting scene. Pretty much what you're expecting to see, but it's still really shocking to see it. So he gets in there, and that's when he's, you know, got the katana up to Zed's throat, and Marcellus Wallace comes out, you know, gets himself situated, grabs a shotgun, shoots Zed right in the junk, as he should. Shoots him right in the junk. And that's when you know everything is going to be different. It has to be. It has to be. Of course he lets Butch go as long as he gets out of town. He's not welcome in LA anymore. He's not going to do anything. He's like, there is no you and me. Just get the hell out of here. You can never come back. You never tell anyone about this. Of course. Of course. So yeah, that scene was absolutely wild. Butch goes, he gets his girl, he rides off on Zed's motorcycle. That scene was the most wild scene. I don't want to spend, you know, all of my time like summarizing the whole movie, but that scene was so wild. I mean, this movie is it's just such a good movie. It really is such a good movie. There are so many great scenes. There are so many great characters. The story is not what you think it's going to be. And then of course you get to Quentin Tarantino being in the movie, and I've heard people say it before, but they're right. He's really not a great actor, but it's still fun to see him in there. It's kind of funny, you know, he plays his little part, and his wife's going to come home and freak out, and that's when you get Harvey Keitel as the wolf. I mean, just, so many good actors. That was great, and that's where it takes you back to the beginning of the movie, and they don't show you, so you're left to believe that Jules, played by Samuel L. Jackson, gets his happy ending to hopefully wander the earth, as he says, you know, meeting people, or as Vincent calls him, a bum. He keeps calling him a bum over and over. So hopefully there's at least one happy ending there. Marcellus kind of gets a happy ending. I don't know if I would call that a happy ending, but he's going to torture Zed to death. Just a phenomenally acted, phenomenally written, phenomenally shot movie. Everything just felt exactly what it was supposed to be. It shows you the dirty, grimy parts of LA, which you also appreciate when you live there because you see it. There are of course parts of LA that are nice, but they're smaller parts, and a lot of it is just this dirty, grimy, and I can imagine it was probably even worse in the 90s. So you really get to see it, and you're just like, yeah, that's LA. That's LA that if you live there, you've seen and you know. But it was just so good. It was so good the way they showed that, and they portrayed everything. I loved it. I really love Pulp Fiction. I get it. It lived up to the hype. I was worried that it wasn't, but it did. It was a fantastic freaking movie. If you've watched it this far, I would assume you've already seen Pulp Fiction, but if you haven't, I recommend you do go out and watch it because it's awesome. The next Quentin Tarantino movie that I do want to watch is not going to be the next review, but I do want to watch Jackie Brown because that's been on the list for a while. Still haven't seen that one. So that'll be a review coming later on. We've got Pulp Fiction. The next review should be Sicario. I'm excited to get back to doing movie reviews as well. This was really, really fun. I haven't talked movies in a while. So, if you guys stuck around to the end, even if you didn't, but if you're watching this now, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. I go live 3 days a week. I'm live on Tuesday nights, Friday nights, and Sunday nights, all at 9 p.m. Eastern. There's going to be some more video content coming up. This is just the start of it. There will be more movie reviews. So yeah, if you like what you're seeing, like, subscribe, leave a comment. It helps out with the algorithm a ton. And I will see you guys for the next movie review and whoever for the next live. All right. Bye.